Hi, today I want to show you an example of what Terraform and Ansible can do working together. This is actually intended to be the demonstration at the very end of a half-day course. The URL is up there on GitHub. You're welcome to go through it and encouraged, in fact, to go through it. But this is the demo at the end. I want to start with that to show you kind of what's capable, what we can do with Terraform and Ansible working together. And what can happen with just a single command. And that command, in our case, is Terraform apply. And what Terraform apply is going to do is it's going to go in to Amazon on my behalf and stand up some services, some EC2 instances, some networking, a load balancer, a bunch of security groups, and it's going to do all of that automatically as code. I don't want to make this demonstration about the code itself. It's all in the GitHub repo, and you can go through it, especially if you go through the courses beforehand. You'll see how that happens. But it's going to do all of that automatically with just this one command. When it's done with that, it's going to go ahead and run Ansible, which is going to take those systems that Terraform just stood up, and it's going to configure them. It's going to log on using SSH, and it's going to go ahead and install software and configure that software and make it all work the way we want it to work. In our case, it's going to set up 2 web servers, a load balancer. We're going to put some data in a database behind those web servers just to show off that we can do it. So all I'm going to do is type yes to this, which tells Terraform that we want it to work, and I'm going to walk you through what's happening, kind of do a play-by-play here. It is going to take a few minutes to run because there's a bunch of stuff to do. The first thing it's going to do, and it's doing right now, is figuring what order it's going to do everything in. But it's standing up some networking. That's what the VPC stuff is, and all these security groups. It's creating a load balancer, so we can send all our traffic to the load balancer, and the load balancer will split the traffic off to either of the 2 web servers we have. It needs to set up all the networking around those. It's going to set up the web servers themselves and a Mongo database, a box for a Mongo database. It creates those. You see those only each take a few seconds to do. And after all that's done, it's going to go ahead and add all of that to what's called a target group behind the load balancer. Once all of that's done, it says, hey, these boxes are up and running. It's going to go ahead and it's going to start an Ansible run. And Ansible is actually going to log onto those boxes, and once those boxes are ready, it's going to use some code from what's called the Ansible Galaxy, so community-supported code, to install NGINX, which is a web server on the web server boxes. It's going to set up PHP on those boxes, so that we can do some dynamic pages on the. Once it's done with all of that configuration, which is almost done here, it's going to go ahead and go over to the MongoDB. It's going to install the Mongo database. And on the Mongo database, it's going to install MongoDB. It's going to set up all the permissions we need for it, and then it's going to drop some data into it. Now, as you can see, you're seeing some of the mixed messages coming through. It's still creating the load balancer, right? So while that's happening, Ansible's already running and setting up those boxes because we didn't need to wait for the load balancer to be up and running before we could get into them. So it figures out what the best order to do stuff in is, what's dependent on what. Ansible's still running, getting the PHP finished up. And once that's done, we should be able to see it go to Mongo. All in all, I think the whole configuration of the load balancer takes about 3 minutes. It should be just about done in the background. Installing PHP and all of that takes a little while. It's got a bunch of different packages that are getting installed. But the code, if you look at it, is really pretty simple. I'm just using something that a gentleman by the name of Jeff Geerling wrote to do it all. I've seen his work, trust it. It's very popular, and so I know I can use it to do this and not have to worry about all these steps that you see scrolling by, these tasks, what they called, to do it. And then at the end here, it's finishing up with it's installing custom homepage and a style, restarting what it needs to. And now it's going to go ahead and install the database. That's also going to take a few minutes to do. But notice we haven't had to do anything else, right? This is all running automatically. And one of the neat things about this is it's completely idempotent. What that means is if I run this again as soon as we're done, it won't have anything to do because everything's already been set up this way. Unless something has changed, there's nothing to do and it won't do anything. That means it's safe to run it over and over and over again. It's also a great way to enforce things. So if you're afraid someone might go onto these boxes and change something, I can just rerun the code and this will set it back the way it's supposed to be, that we know it's in code. That really helps with compliance, it helps with auditing, helps with security in general. All right, we are just about done getting the Mongo stuff set up. And you notice there's a lot of steps, like I mentioned earlier, but again, I don't have to mess with them. This is something we're taking, in this case, we're taking from a group called the Mongo Community Collection, which is provided by the people that support Mongo and Ansible. So again, I don't need to know all these steps. I just have to give it a couple easy commands, and we'll set that all up. All right, it's going to go ahead and start Mongo. It's going to make sure we have a couple pieces that it needs for Python to do some things, including loading the data into place. And we're just about at the end here. Oops. And once this is done, I'll bring up the web page and show you that it all worked. And there we go. At the very end of it, we stood up 33 different resources, and those are a combination of EC2 instances and security groups and networking and the load balancer and all the configuration that goes with it, plus running Ansible at the end. The Ansible run itself took just over 5 minutes, but Terraform at the end was helpful enough to spit out a URL for the load balancer that I configured. And if I bring that site up here, I can go ahead and hit that and see this dynamic page come up. And this is a dynamic PHP page. It's obviously just a demo, giving some information about it. It's running on, retrieving data from Mongo, have a list of the planets. The previous lessons didn't have Pluto in the list, so I wanted to make the list a little bit different just so I knew it was a good sign of life here. But this is all pulled directly from the Mongo database using PHP with a really simple page, and all of this is running because of one command I gave to Terraform that stood up the boxes from scratch and created it all. And now if I go in and I'm done with using it, I can do a Terraform destroy. It'll go in and it'll check on those systems that just got stood up, see which ones need to be broken down if I want to get rid of that entire environment and all the settings involved. And once it kind of gets its whole plan together here, it'll tell me what it's going to do. Any day now. There we go. These are all the 33 resources that have stood up. It's checking to see if they're still there, find out what's going on about them and how it's going to have to delete them. It needs to know some information because they have to be done in order, right? Certain things can't be deleted before others that are using them. So we go. We just tell it we do want it to destroy all these items. And it's just going to go ahead and get rid of them. And when this is done, all those systems just got torn down. So I stood them up with one command. I tore them all back down with one command. And as soon as this is done, we can verify it just by going back to that web page. All right, just about torn down. Get the last little bit. Got to be pretty close. Let me go ahead and pull this up. I know it's still working, but enough of it's torn down that I can see if I just refresh, can no longer be reached. Because I see that it pulled down the web servers themselves. They're completely destroyed. Oh, it says it's still destroying one of them, but the ALB was torn down, the application load balancer. There we go. Everything's destroyed. So everything's gone now. So stood it up with one command, tore it down with one command. That's the power of infrastructure as code, using tools like Terraform and Ansible, and tying them together so one command can bring up an entire environment. Hopefully that was useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to take a look at the course that I was talking about, the intro to Terraform and Ansible. It's on Other DevOps Gene on GitHub, and I hope it's useful. Like I said, thank you.